Taemin Kim wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the repaired mining drone. It would work for another few months before something else broke. Everything on mining station Omega-7 was old and breaking down. Just like him, he thought with a tired smile. He had lived alone on the station for 8 years. The mining company had left when the asteroid belt ran out of good ore. They told him to come with them, but Taemin stayed. Someone had to keep the lights on and the air flowing. Besides, where would he go? Earth felt too crowded after so many years in space. The station was big enough for 300 people, but now it was just him. He had turned off most of the sections to save power. His home was the central hub where all the important machines lived. The fusion reactor hummed in the basement. The water recyclers gurgled in the walls. The air scrubbers wheezed but still worked. "Good morning, Buddy," Taemin said to the maintenance computer. He had named it Buddy years ago because talking to nothing felt too lonely. "Good morning, Taemin," the simple AI replied. "Reactor is at 92%. Water levels normal. Air mixture good. You have 17 repair jobs waiting." Taemin laughed. "Always 17. When I fix one thing, another breaks." He walked to his small garden where he grew tomatoes and lettuce under artificial lights. The plants were doing well. They were his only living companions besides the bacteria in the recyclers. He picked a tomato for breakfast and ate it while watching the stars through the big window. Space was beautiful, but empty. Sometimes supply ships came by, but not often. The pilots were always in a hurry to leave. They thought he was crazy for staying alone so long. Maybe they were right. The warning alarm made him jump. Something was coming toward the station. Taemin ran to the scanner room and looked at the screens. 7 large objects were moving through the asteroid field. They were not human ships. They looked strange, almost alive. "Buddy, what are those things?" Taemin asked. "Unknown. They are very big. They do not match any ship in the database." A space storm was building nearby. Taemin had seen many storms in 8 years. They were dangerous and could tear ships apart. But these strange ships moved through the storm like it was nothing. They came straight toward his station. Taemin's hands shook as he watched. Were they hostile? He had no weapons except some mining charges. The station's old shields would not stop a serious attack. He could only hope these visitors were friendly. The ships were beautiful in a scary way. They had curves like living things instead of straight lines like human ships. Their hulls seemed to change color as they moved. When they got close, Taemin saw they were huge. Each one was twice the size of his station. "This is mining station Omega-7, Taemin said into his radio. "Please identify yourselves." "We hear you, human," came a voice. It was female and spoke perfect standard, but with an accent he did not recognize. "We request permission to dock. We mean no harm." Taemin looked at his empty docking bays. He had not used most of them in years. "You are welcome to dock. But I should warn you, I am alone here. If you need supplies or major repairs, I cannot help much." "We understand. Preparing to dock now." The ships moved with impossible grace. They connected to his docking ports so smoothly it looked like they were made for each other. Taemin heard the docking clamps engage and felt the station shake slightly under their weight. He put on his best clothes, which were still work coveralls with patches. Then he walked to docking bay 3 where the largest ship had connected. His heart beat fast. He had not talked to real people in months. The airlock cycled, and the door opened. What came through was not what Taemin expected. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with a graceful build that reminded him of dancers. Her skin had scales that shifted from dark blue to silver as she moved. Her eyes were large and golden, with intelligence that seemed ancient. She wore robes that looked like they were made from starlight. Behind her came 6 others, all similar but each unique. Some were taller, some shorter. Their scales showed different colors. One had markings like jewels across her face. Another had long hair that seemed to float on its own. "I am Nayung of the Draknari," the first one said. She bowed slightly. "These are my sisters-in-laws, Hyejin, Sunja, Miran, Yoonji, Youngsuk, and Jiwon." Taemin bowed back, not knowing what else to do. "I am Taemin Kim, Welcome to my station. It is not much, but you are safe here. Nayung's scales rippled with colors he could not name. We are the widowed mothers of the Dreknari clans. We seek sanctuary, and perhaps more. She gestured, and the others brought forward containers that glowed softly. Through the transparent sides, Taemin could see large egg-like objects. They pulsed with gentle light, but the light seemed weak. We are refugees, Taemin Kim. Our empire has fallen to an enemy that consumes life itself. We carry the future of our race, but Nayung's voice broke slightly. Without our mates, our children are dying. Taemin looked at the 7 women and their precious cargo. Their scales had dulled with grief. Their golden eyes held pain too deep for words. They had traveled across space carrying eggs that might be the last of their kind. I do not understand everything, Taemin said slowly. But I understand loss. And I understand that some things are too important to let die. He stepped back and gestured toward the station's interior. My home is your home for as long as you need it. Nayung's scales brightened slightly. You show kindness to strangers. This is rare in the galaxy. Maybe, Taemin replied. But I have been alone for 8 years. Perhaps it is time I was not. As he led them into the station, Taemin wondered what he had gotten himself into. 7 alien women with dying children and enemies that consumed life itself. His quiet life was about to become very complicated. But as he looked at their faces and saw hope mixing with their grief, he knew he had made the right choice. Some broken things were worth fixing, no matter how hard the job might be. Taemin spent the next week learning about his new guests. The Dreknari women were nothing like the aliens in human movies. They were intelligent, proud, and deeply sad. Each one had lost someone important in their war. Nayung had been a fleet admiral. Her mate died in the last battle defending their homeworld. She still wore his battle ring on a chain around her neck. When she thought no one was looking, her scales would turn dark with grief. Hye-jin was the youngest. She had worked with biotechnology, growing ships and weapons from living matter. Her mate died protecting their clan's nursery from the enemy. She barely spoke above a whisper and jumped at sudden sounds. Sunja was the oldest and wisest. She knew ancient technologies that could reshape matter and energy. Her mate had fallen defending sacred breeding grounds that held 1,000 years of Dreknari history. She spent hours meditating over old data crystals. Miran had been a diplomat who spoke 12 languages and had made peace between warring species. Her mate was executed for refusing to give up clan territories to the enemy. She still tried to find the right words to heal every problem. Yoonji was a warrior poet who could fight with blade and verse equally well. Her mate died holding a mountain pass so civilians could escape. She composed sad songs that made the station's metal walls vibrate with emotion. Youngsuk was a healer who could mend flesh and bone with her touch. Her mate died from enemy bioweapons while treating wounded soldiers. She still reached out to heal every small injury, even paper cuts. Jiwon was a navigator who could plot courses through impossible space. Her mate's ship was eaten by a creature made of void and hunger while scouting escape routes. She stared at star charts like they held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. Each woman carried 3 or 4 eggs in special containers. The eggs were beautiful, like giant pearls that glowed from within. But the light was getting dimmer each day. We call it life song, Nayung explained as they sat in the station's observation deck. All living things sing together in harmony. Mates share their songs to help children grow. Without our mates, she touched one of her eggs gently. The song grows quiet. Taemin watched the eggs pulse weakly. Is there nothing else that can help them? We hope to find others of our kind, but we may be the last. Our enemy, the Void Swarm, consumed entire star systems. They eat life itself, leaving nothing but empty space. The Dreknari had incredible technology. Their ships were grown, not built. They could reshape living matter and heal injuries that would kill a human. But they needed something Taemin did not understand, this life song that kept their children alive. Taemin tried to help in the only way he knew how. He fixed things. The station's old habitat modules had been shut down for years, but he got them working again. He rigged new environmental systems for the Dreknari's special needs. Their ships needed different kinds of power and atmosphere. You have skilled hands, Sunja observed as she watched him repair an air recycler. Your people have a gift for making broken things work. It is just practice, Taemin said. When you live alone, you learn to fix everything yourself. No, Yijin said softly. It is more than that. You understand how things want to work. You listen to the machines. Taemin had never thought about it that way. He just knew when something was wrong and how to make it right. Like now, watching these 7 women and their dying children. Something was very wrong and he wanted badly to fix it. The Draknari were fascinated by human technology. They had never seen anything so crude that worked so well. Taemin's jury-rigged repairs held together with wire and determination amazed them. Your fusion reactor should have failed years ago, Na Young said after examining the power plant. How does it still work? I talked to it nicely, Taemin replied with a smile, and replaced the parts that complained too loudly. But jokes could not hide the growing problem. More eggs were failing each day. The Draknari women grew more desperate and sad. They huddled around their containers, singing lullabies in their own language that made the station ring like a bell. One evening, Na Young came to find Taemin in his workshop. Her scales were shifting between hope and fear. There is something we have not told you, she said carefully. We did not find your station by accident. Taemin put down his tools and gave her his full attention. We have sensors that can detect life song patterns across great distances. Humans sing differently than any species we know. Your song is strange but very strong. I do not understand, Na Young took a deep breath. Human life song might be able to substitute for our lost mates. It could keep our children alive. Taemin felt his heart skip. That sounds like good news. What is the problem? The bonding process is permanent, and we do not know if a human could survive it. It might kill you or change you in ways we cannot predict. They looked at each other across the workshop. Taemin had lived alone for so long that the idea of being permanently connected to 7 alien beings scared him. But he had also grown to care about these women and their unborn children. How much time do we have? He asked. Days. Maybe a week for the strongest eggs. Taemin nodded slowly. Then we should start figuring out how to make this work. Na Young's scales brightened with surprise. You would risk your life for our children? I have been alone for 8 years, Taemin said. Maybe it is time I was not alone anymore. That night he could not sleep. He walked the empty corridors of his station and thought about his choice. He could refuse and let nature take its course. The Draknari would leave, their children would die, and he would be alone again. Or he could try something that had never been done before. Risk his life to save a species he barely understood. Trade his solitude for a connection he could not imagine. In the morning he found all 7 women waiting for him in the main corridor. They had heard him walking all night. We will not force this choice, Na Young said. If you say no, we understand. Taemin looked at their faces, at the hope and fear mixed together. Then he looked at the eggs glowing so faintly he could barely see the light. I have spent 8 years keeping broken things working, he said. This is just another repair job. A very important one. For the first time since they had arrived, all 7 women smiled at once. Their scales shimmered with colors that had no human names, but Taemin thought they looked like hope. The bonding ritual would take place in 3 days. Soonja needed that much time to prepare the biopods that would make the connection possible. Taemin spent those days learning what he could about Draknari biology and saying goodbye to his old life. He made recordings for the supply ships in case something went wrong. He updated all the station systems and wrote detailed repair manuals. If he died or changed too much, maybe someone else could keep the lights on. The Draknari women worked together to modify one of their biopods for human use. The device looked like a giant flower made of crystal and living metal. Tubes and wires grew from its surface like roots reaching for water. It will not hurt, Young-suk promised as she adjusted the bio-connections. You will sleep, and when you wake, we will be connected. What will it feel like? Taemin asked. We do not know, Na Young admitted. No human has ever bonded with our kind. We are walking into the unknown together. On the second day, their long-range sensors picked up something that made all the Draknari go very still. Dark shapes were moving at the edge of the star system. Void swarm scouts. How did they find us? Hyojin whispered. Jiwan was already checking star charts. They follow life-song traces. Our ships still carry the resonance of our home worlds. They can track us across half the galaxy. The scouts were still far away, but they were coming. The main fleet would not be far behind. If the bonding failed, everyone would die. If it succeeded but took too long, everyone would die anyway. We should run, Miran said. Find another hiding place. The eggs cannot survive another jump, Sunja replied sadly. They are too weak. Taemin looked at the faces around him. These women had already lost everything once. He would not let them lose their children too. Then we do the bonding tonight, he said, and we prepare to fight. Nayoung started to protest, but Taemin held up his hand. This is my station. I have kept it running for 8 years against everything space could throw at it. I will not give up now. That evening they gathered in the biopod chamber. Taemin lay down in the strange device while the 7 Draknari women positioned themselves around him. Sunja began the ritual chanting that would guide the process. Remember, Nayoung said as the pod began to glow, do not fight the connection. Let our songs blend with yours. The biopod closed around Taemin like gentle hands. He felt warmth spreading through his body, then a tingling sensation in his mind. Gradually, he became aware of other thoughts touching his own. Nayoung's mind was like a fortress, strong, protective, and carrying the weight of command. Heejin's thoughts were soft and careful, always reaching out to nurture and grow. Sunja's mind held vast libraries of knowledge stretching back centuries. Miran's thoughts spoke in many voices, always seeking harmony and understanding. Chunji's mind danced with rhythm and emotion, turning feelings into beauty. Youngsuk's thoughts reached out with healing touch, wanting to fix every hurt. Jiwon's mind sailed through star maps and navigation charts, always searching for the way home. Instead of being overwhelmed, Taemin found that his own mind fit with theirs like a missing puzzle piece. His practical, problem-solving nature seemed to anchor their more complex thoughts. When they worried, his calm steadied them. When they despaired, his stubborn refusal to give up strengthened them. The bonding deepened. Taemin began to understand the life song that was so important to the Draknari. It was not just energy or music. It was the harmony that connected all living things. He could feel it flowing between him and the 7 women, and from them to the precious eggs. The eggs responded immediately. Their weak glow brightened and steadied. The dying children inside began to grow again, nourished by a life song that had never existed before, the harmony between human determination and Draknari wisdom. But the bonding changed Taemin too. He could suddenly understand the biotechnology that had mystified him before. The living ships made sense. The organic computers seemed as simple as the mechanical ones he had always worked with. When he woke up, the world looked different. Colors were brighter and more complex. He could sense the life in everything around him. The bacteria in the air recyclers, the plants in his garden, even the simple AI that ran the station's basic functions. How do you feel? Nayoung asked. Her concern flowed across their new connection like warm water. Different, Taemin said, but good different. Like I can finally see what was always there. He stood up and walked to the nearest wall panel. Without thinking, he placed his hand on it and interfaced directly with the station's computer systems. Information flowed into his mind. Power levels, system status, maintenance schedules. But now he could also sense the underlying patterns, the way everything connected together. This is remarkable, Sunja said, watching his biosigns on her scanners. Your brain activity has increased by 30%, but your stress levels are lower than before. Taemin grinned. I understand both kinds of technology now. Want to see something amazing? He led them to the main engineering bay where Draknari biopods sat next to human fusion reactors. With his new understanding, Taemin began connecting them together. Bioorganic conduits grew to interface with metal pipes. Living computers linked with digital processors. What are you doing? Heejin asked with excitement. Making something new, Taemin replied. Human technology is good at brute force and reliability. Yours is good at efficiency and adaptation. Together, the hybrid systems came online with a harmony that made the entire station sing. Power output increased by 50% while using less fuel. The life support systems became self-repairing. The shield strengthened and began to regenerate automatically. The Void Swarm has never seen anything like this, Nayoung said with growing hope. Good, Taemin replied, because they are about to get a very unpleasant surprise. The scout ships were close now, dark shapes that seemed to eat light itself. Through the bonding connection, Taemin felt the fear of his new family, but he also felt their determination and their trust in him. We have work to do, he said, already designing weapons that had never existed before. Let me show you what a human mechanic can build when he has the right tools. The first void creature reached sensor range as the modified station weapons came online. Taemin's hybrid technology fired beams of pure life-song energy that burned through the creature's darkness like sunlight through shadow. The scout ship dissolved with a scream that echoed across dimensions. That got their attention, Hounji said with fierce satisfaction. Taemin was already working on the next improvement. With 7 brilliant minds connected to his own and the combined technology of 2 species, he felt like he could build miracles. Let them come, he said as his hands danced over controls that responded to both thought and touch. This is my station and nothing breaks what I choose to keep whole. The main Void Swarm fleet arrived 3 days later like a storm made of hungry darkness. Taemin watched them through the station's enhanced sensors and felt his blood run cold. There were hundreds of ships, each one a writhing mass of shadow that hurt to look at directly. They consume entire star systems, Nayoung said through their mental link. Planets, stars, everything that lives, all gone. But the station was ready. In 3 days, Taemin and the 7 Draknari women had transformed the old mining platform into something that had never existed before. Human engineering merged with Draknari biotechnology, created weapons and defenses that neither species could have built alone. The hybrid shields hummed with life-song energy that pushed back against the void. Creatures' hunger. The weapons fired beams of pure harmony that burned through their darkness. Most importantly, the station itself had become partly alive, able to repair damage and adapt to new threats. First wave incoming. Ji-Won reported from the navigation center. Her mind touched Taemin's, sharing sensor data directly. 60 ships moving in formation pattern 7. Taemin felt the others respond instantly. Nayoung took command positions and began coordinating defenses. Heejin activated the bioweapon systems she had grown in the station's expanded laboratories. Sunja awakened ancient defense protocols that made the station's structure shift and flow like water. The void ships opened fire first. Dark beams that drained energy from everything they touched struck the station's shields. But instead of weakening, the hybrid defenses fed on the attack. Human stubbornness mixed with Draknari adaptability turned the enemy's strength against them. Return fire, Taemin commanded through the shared link. The station's weapons were unlike anything in either species' history. They fired bullets of crystallized life-song that exploded into networks of healing energy. Where they struck void ships, the darkness began to change, becoming something brighter and more real. Impossible, one of the void entities broadcast on all frequencies. What are you? What have you done? Taemin opened a communication channel. I am a mechanic, he said simply. And you are broken. Let me fix you. The battle raged for hours. More void ships kept coming, but the station held. Every time the enemy adapted to one weapon, Taemin and his bonded family created something new. Biomissiles that carried healing viruses, shield drones that sang lullabies to calm the void creature's hunger, tractor beams made of pure compassion that pulled damaged ships to safety instead of destroying them. In the middle of the fight, alarms started going off in the biopod chambers. The eggs, Young-suk called out. They are hatching. Taemin felt his heart jump. This was the worst possible timing. But through the bonding connection, he also felt excitement from all 7 women. Their children were finally being born. I will handle the battle, he told them. Go to your babies. We cannot leave you alone against the entire fleet, Nayoung protested. You are not leaving me alone, Taemin replied with a smile. We are bonded. I carry all of you with me. The 7 Draknari women rushed to the hatching chambers while Taemin continued to fight. But he was not really alone. Through their connection, he could still access their knowledge and abilities. Nayoung's tactical genius guided his strategies. Heejin's biotech expertise helped him grow new weapons. Sunja's ancient wisdom showed him patterns in the enemy's behavior. The first baby Draknari emerged from its egg with scales that shifted between human-like bronze and traditional Draknari silver. It looked around with curious golden eyes and immediately began interfacing with both the biopods and the mechanical systems nearby. They are perfect, Young-suk whispered through the mental link. And they understand both kinds of technology instinctively. More babies hatched quickly. Each one was unique, carrying traits from both their mothers and their bonded human father figure. Some had scales that could change to metal-like textures. Others could communicate directly with machines. All of them seemed to bridge the gap between organic and mechanical systems naturally. But something else was happening during the battle. The void creatures that had been struck by the station's healing weapons were not being destroyed. Instead, they were changing. Their hungry darkness was becoming something more stable and less desperate. Through the communication channels, Taemin began hearing new voices. Not the screaming hunger of the void swarm, but confused and frightened thoughts. Where are we? What happened to us? Why do we hurt so much? Young-suk's healing instincts reached out through the bond. They are not evil, she realized. They are in pain. One of the newly hatched babies crawled over to a communication panel and began making sounds that the translation computers could not understand. But the void creatures responded immediately. "A child speaks to us," one of them broadcast. "A child who knows our true language." The baby was communicating with the void entities on a level that adults could not access. Through its innocent mind, a different picture began to emerge. The void swarm was not an invasion force. They were refugees like the Draknari, but refugees from another dimension entirely. "We were energy beings," the lead void entity explained through the baby's translation. "Our realm collapsed. We fled here, but this dimension burns us. We consume life not from hatred, but because we need it to anchor ourselves to reality. Without it, we fade back into the dying void." Taemin felt understanding dawn. "You are not evil. You are just trying to survive in a place you were never meant to exist. Yes, but survival here means death for others. We have become monsters to live." The battle stopped as this revelation spread. Both fleets hung motionless in space while a human mechanic, 7 alien mothers, and their hybrid children considered the impossible problem. "What if we could give you what you need without taking it from others?" Taemin asked. Through the baby's unique abilities, the void entities shared their deepest need: stable anchor points in this dimension that would let them exist without consuming other life forms. It was an engineering problem of staggering complexity, but Taemin was a very good mechanic. And now he had the biotechnology mastery of the Draknari, the dimensional knowledge of the void entities, and the bridge-building abilities of children who belonged to all three groups. "I think," he said slowly, "I know how to fix this." The solution would require cooperation between all three species and resources from across the star system. But for the first time since the Void Swarm had begun their desperate rampage across the galaxy, there was hope for a different ending. "Are you willing to try?" Taemin asked both fleets. The answer came back from hundreds of voices speaking as one: "Yes." The solution was the biggest repair job Taemin had ever attempted. He needed to build dimensional anchors that could give the void entities stable existence in normal space, without them having to consume other life forms. It was like trying to build a bridge between two different realities. The project required everything the station had and more. Mining ships stripped asteroids for raw materials. Dragnari bioforges grew living components that could interface with dimensional energy. Void entities contributed their knowledge of how reality worked between dimensions. But the most important part came from the hybrid children. They were the living proof that different kinds of existence could merge and create something new. Their unique abilities let them communicate between all three groups and help design technologies that none of the species could have imagined alone. "The anchors must be more than machines," explained Sunja as she worked on the theoretical framework. "They need to be alive but also mechanical, organic but also digital, real but also dimensional." Taemin nodded, his hands already building the first prototype. "Like everything else we have made together. Neither fully one thing nor another, but something entirely new." The work took months. The Void Fleet waited patiently while construction continued. Some of their ships began to change just from being near the station's lifesong emissions. They became less hungry and more curious. A few even helped with the construction, using their dimensional abilities to fold space and make impossible connections between components. The first anchor was the size of a small moon. It looked like a crystal flower with metal roots and bioorganic stems that pulsed with gentle light. When they turned it on, reality shimmered around it like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "Dimensional field stable," Jiwan reported from her sensor station. "The anchor is creating a pocket of stable spacetime." One of the smaller void entities volunteered to test it first. As it approached the anchor, its writhing darkness began to solidify. Shadows became substance. Hunger became curiosity. The creature that emerged looked like a being made of living starlight, with thoughts that sparkled like jewels. "I can think clearly for the first time in so long," it said wonderingly. "I remember who I was before the hunger. I remember my name." More anchors were built quickly. Each one was slightly different, designed to accommodate the various types of void entities. Some needed more dimensional stability. Others required different types of energy resonance. Taemin treated each one like a custom repair job, finding exactly what each individual entity needed to exist peacefully. As the void creatures stabilized, they shared more of their story. They had been peaceful energy beings from a higher dimension until their realm began collapsing. The transition to this dimension had driven them mad with hunger and pain. They had consumed entire civilizations not from evil intent, but from desperate need. "We remember those we destroyed," their leader said sadly. "We carry their life songs within us. Perhaps someday we can give them back." This gave Taemin an idea for an even bigger project. If the void entities carried the life essence of destroyed worlds, maybe those worlds could be restored. It would take decades of work and cooperation from all three species, but it might be possible. The station grew into a small city as refugees from other destroyed systems began arriving. Not all were friendly at first. Some came seeking revenge against the void entities. Others were suspicious of the unusual cooperation between humans and Draknari. But the hybrid children had a gift for bringing different groups together. They could speak every language and understand every cultural difference. They saw connections where adults saw only problems. Under their innocent guidance, former enemies began working together. Taemin found his role changing from mechanic to mediator. He was still fixing things, but now he was fixing relationships between entire species. The bonding with the 7 Draknari women had taught him that some repairs required connection rather than replacement. "You have built something unprecedented." "Here," said an ambassador from the Galactic Council who had come to investigate reports of the station. 3 species that should be enemies working together as family. "We just followed the example of the children," Taemin replied, watching his hybrid sons and daughters play with young void entities who sparkled like living galaxies. They do not see enemies. They see family. 5 years later, the mining station had become the heart of a new kind of civilization. Hundreds of species lived and worked together, sharing technologies and cultures in ways that created constant innovations. The dimensional anchors had evolved into entire cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in the dimension between dimensions. The Draknari children had grown into remarkable beings who could interface with any technology and communicate with any life form. They served as natural ambassadors and problem solvers, inheriting the best traits from all their parent species. Taemin stood in his garden, which now covered several acres and included plants from dozens of worlds. Nayoung worked beside him, her scales showing the deep contentment that came from watching their children build a better galaxy than the one they had inherited. "Do you ever miss the solitude?" she asked through their mental link. Taemin considered the question while watching a group of children, some scaled, some glowing with dimensional energy, some purely human, working together to solve a puzzle that required abilities from all 3 species. "Sometimes I remember the quiet," he said, "but I would not trade this for anything. We built something that should have been impossible." "What is that?" "A family big enough to hold the entire galaxy." A new ship was approaching the station, another refugee group seeking sanctuary. Taemin felt the familiar excitement of a new repair challenge. Each species that arrived brought different problems and different solutions. Some conflicts took months to resolve. Others required completely new technologies or social structures. But Taemin had learned that the best way to fix something broken was not to force it back to what it had been before. Sometimes the best repair was to help it become something entirely new and better than anyone had imagined possible. "Come on," he said to Nayoung, his bonded mate and partner in the greatest construction project in galactic history. "We have visitors to welcome and a universe to fix." As they walked toward the docking bays where the newest refugees waited, Taemin reflected on how much had changed since that day when 7 desperate women had knocked on his door. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to be part of something larger. Now he was connected not just to 7 remarkable women and their hybrid children, but to an entire community of beings who had chosen cooperation over conflict. They were writing a new chapter in galactic history, one repair job at a time. The universe was still broken in many places. Wars continued in distant sectors. Prejudice and fear still divided species and worlds. But here on one small station that had become a city, then a movement, then a new way of thinking about what was possible, hope grew stronger every day. And in the center of it all was a human mechanic who had learned that the most important things to fix were not machines or even civilizations, but the connections between people that make all other repairs possible.